So welcome back from your weekend. We have, including today, 10 days of class left. 11 technically with the final. But so 5 weeks, not a lot of time left. We're going to spend a few more days in AutoCAD, and then we'll move into SketchUp and do some collaging and all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to continue on in the world of AutoCAD. Remember, this is the most basic crash course I can give you, but the hope is that you can get just enough to get by. Did you have a question? John, did you have a question? No? Okay. So we're going to continue on. I want to talk today primarily about layers, but we'll also talk about line properties, being able to do different line types and that sort of thing. I brought up the drawing file from exercise 120. You guys will be doing the drawing file that you created last class, your 121 exercise, which is what you're going to be doing for assignment 105. And so I want you to work on assignment 105 today while you're doing these elevations. We're going to kind of talk through first layers, and then we'll talk about how do you draw building elevations and that sort of thing. We're staying away from anything in 3D in AutoCAD. It's too much, too fast. I will also admit that I really don't like 3D in AutoCAD at all. I think there are far better solutions out there, which is why we're going to do SketchUp for the 3D portion of this. So anyway, what I want to start with is I want to start with kind of layers and how layers work. Once again, I am in AutoCAD 2015, so things might look a little different if you're on 2014, but it's relatively the same. And I'm going to be in the drafting and annotation workspace, which is what we've been working in. And I'm going to be on the home ribbon, which is right here under home. And I'm going to come over to this middle section that's called layers. And this middle section gives us kind of a snapshot of what layers are right now. The layer that's displayed here in this little drop-down menu, that's the default layer. So if you have nothing selected, that's the layer that things are going to go on for right now. It's the current layer. And so I want to go in and I want to look at my layer properties. And so there's a big button next to it that says layer properties. I can click on that, or I can just type layer. That works and gets you to the same place. And it brings up a little window here. Sometimes it pops up on top. Sometimes it shows up nested on one side. If you can't quite see enough, if you move, like if yours was like this, if you move to this edge, you'll get a little double-sided arrow. It's a little hard to get to it. And you can click and drag and make this a little bit bigger so you can see a little bit more information about your layer properties. And so this layer properties manager will show us what layers are currently in the drawing. I have layer 0, which is the default AutoCAD layer. Every drawing that is created has a layer 0 associated with it. If you put in any blocks, chances are you have a def points layer that's related to blocks. You can safely ignore that, and it basically doesn't do much. And you probably have maybe another layer, maybe not, but we're going to go through. Today I want you to create a guides layer. We'll talk through that. I have an interior layer for a lot of my interior stuff, and I also have a text and dimensioning layer, but that's kind of irrelevant for right now. We'll create that next class. So if I want to create a new layer, right, I have buttons up here at the top. I have the first one is a new layer button. That's what we're going to use. There are also kind of specialty ways of creating a layer, but they're a little bit more advanced as we go forward. So what we're going to concentrate on is this new layer button right here. When I click on the new layer, you'll see that it'll give me a blank layer. It'll be highlighted in blue, and it'll select the text such that I can rename that layer. So for you guys, you're going to type guides as your first layer. I already have it created. And it's going to end up looking like this, where it says guides. And I want you to come across here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what each of these mean. Okay? We can turn the viewport on or turn it off with the little light bulb. Freezing and thawing does virtually the same thing, and so for the scope of what you need to know in this class, you can use either one. Okay? Locking the layer means that I can see it, but I can't edit it. I can't change anything. I can't select it in any way. Okay? Next option here is color, and I want you to go ahead and click on color, and you can change it, say, to red or to green. You want to pick a color that's easy to see on the background. Yellow is fine in the world of AutoCAD. If you're working in Rhino, don't ever pick yellow because it selects objects in yellow. So you'll get confused as to what's selected or not. Generally, I pick red or green. Personally, I like green. Whatever. Doesn't matter what color you pick. And then I'll go ahead and say OK, so it's green. As I come across here, I have something called line type. This is the default line type for any line that's on this layer. Continuous is the default. It just means it's a basic line. Okay. As we continue over, I have a line weight associated with it. And you'll see on the back of your handout, once again, I gave you the sample line weights. This is a mere guide for you, but it gives you some sense of what things should look like, such that when you go ahead and print out your drawing, it looks like it should. Okay? Because we use a variety of line weights. This is a holdover to when we used to hand draw a drawing, right? Where you'd vary the line weight. How many people have taken 130? Okay, some of you have. That's good. This will be easy for you, right? There's a variety of line weights. You remember you had to practice with different leads and all that stuff. This is essentially the same thing, only we get to do it the digital way, which is nice. So anyway, we have the ability to change the default line weight of any line that's on a layer. Right? So if you know that you're drawing doors and you want the line weight to be a specific line weight and you had a layer that was all doors, it would be easy to change that line weight by layer. Okay? As we scroll over here, we have the ability to adjust transparency. Right? The plot style has to do with the way that pens were assigned in the old days to plotting. Don't worry about it for right now. The next icon you see is a little printer icon. Okay? That little printer icon will determine whether this layer is seen when you go to print or not. And since this layer is going to be used as guides, right, it's a perfect layer not to be shown when we print. Right? So anything that we draw on it isn't going to be showing up down the road. So I've gone ahead and I've clicked the little printer icon, and you see when I click it, it gives me that little red circle through it. That means it's a non-printing layer. So when I go to, say, File, Plot, and I go over to the big plotter and I plot this drawing out, these lines won't show up. Right? So it's a really useful thing to have. And then these have to do with whether it's being shown in a new viewport or not, and you guys really don't have to worry about that just yet. Okay? So the other thing is if I want one of these layers to be the active layer, so the layer that I'm drawing on, if I double click right next to where the name of the layer is, you see that the green check moves, right? And that's therefore my current layer that I'm drawing on. I'm going to create one more layer while we're here, and I'm going to call this layer South Elevation. If I can type. There we go. Okay. And for right now, we'll go ahead and leave that as white. Remember that colors or things that are white in AutoCAD, because we have kind of the inverse background, when you go to print, they're going to turn out black. Right? So I'll go ahead and say OK. And that'll be white. My guides layer is my current layer. It has the green check mark on it, so I'm good to go. I'm going to go ahead and close this layers property manager here for a second. Right, there's a little X. Don't hit the X that's up here. There's a little tiny X that shows up if you roll over the layer property manager bar here. You click the X, it goes away. Okay, and so now I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I can see. I'm going to draw the south elevation directly below my drawing. Right? And this goes a little bit, the people that have taken 130 have spent a little bit more time dealing with this, but there are some drawing conventions that will help us to draw these things. One is that if we draw the south elevation directly below, we can use a lot of the floor plan to pull lines down to reference. Okay? And so that's what I'm going to teach you how to do. Remember, we're on the guides layer, and we can confirm that by coming back up to the layers section of the home ribbon. There it is. Guides is listed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a few reference lines to get started. And I'm going to use what's called a construction ray to do this. Okay, so I'm going to type ray, R-A-Y, and I'll hit enter. And I'm going to start right here at this corner, and I'm going to draw a line that's straight down. And I'll hit enter when I'm done. And you see that it's kind of an infinite line that goes straight down. Okay, I'm going to repeat that for each corner of the building. Going straight down, there it is. And I'll do one more for right here. Okay, so I've given myself a few reference lines as I start to build this up. The other thing that I want to do is I want to create what's called a bounding box around my object, because I'm going to ultimately use that. So I'm going to use a rectangle tool, which is right here. And I'm going to start in this corner, and I'm going to draw a box that completely contains my object here. Oh, I have to turn on right here snapping reference lines on. And we'll drag that over. And we'll drag this down. There it is. And so I end up with a rectangle that goes around the whole of my building. Right? If my building was a different shape, right, my building happens to be square, you just want to make sure that this bounding box goes all the way around your object. Okay? That'll be useful down the road. All right? So I have that drawn. I have my rays coming down. Now it's going to be time to start drawing this basic elevation. So I'll go ahead and start with a line. It could be a polyline or a line. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to draw a line somewhere down here that's kind of arbitrary. It doesn't matter really where it is. Right? And I'll draw it across all of my lines. Okay? That's going to represent where the ground is when I start to draw this elevation. Okay? So now I need to know a few things. I need to know how tall the building is, right? And I need to know how far off the ground the floor is. Right? In reality, if we think about a building, right, generally think about for a second your house, right, when you come home. If you live on the second story of the apartment building, it doesn't really help you. But let's say you lived on the first floor, right? Chances are there's a couple steps up to your front door, right? If not, there is at least a tiny, tiny little step to go into the house, right, if there isn't a step. You guys thinking back, remember that a little bit? Right? Little tiny step. So we need to raise the building up off the ground just a little bit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start here and I'm going to go up a little bit. And we'll say a foot to be arbitrary. Right? And I'll draw another line that goes across. There it is. So that'll be my finished floor inside. Anybody know the height of a ceiling inside? Standard? 8 feet? Good. So you guys are knowing a few things, right? So what can I do? I can use the offset command. Remember, it's right here as a button. And I can say I want to offset by 8 feet. And we'll go from there to there. Okay? So I have my 8 foot. That'll be the inside. And now I have a little bit of a roof to draw, but for right now I'm just going to ignore the roof, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay? So I have those pieces. Let me go ahead and do a little bit of trimming. So I'm going to type trim. Trim. And then I'm going to hit enter one more time for all. And I'm going to trim off the ends of these two pieces like that. Okay? And now I'm going to go ahead and draw a few more lines. So I'll come back to the line tool. And we'll draw a line that represents each of these vertical pieces. There. There. And I am right-clicking to repeat the last command. There it is. All right, so now I could leave these guides here, but I want to show you guys what it looks like. So I'm going to delete the rays here for just a second. Oops. Apparently it didn't like me on these lines. All right, so I end up with this, okay, which is the start. This section here represents this edge. This section here in front represents this edge, right there. So now I need to pull down a few of the windows so we can start to see what this looks like in elevation. Right? So I'm going to use the ray command again, ray, and I'm going to come up here to my windows, and I'm going to draw a couple rays. All right, we'll do one from there, one from there, one from there, and one from right there. Okay? So as we're doing this and we're laying it out, if you don't know the measurement of something, right, and we're talking about how high is the ceiling or whatever, if you guess at it, it's fine. Right? In the course of this class, I don't really care how accurate measurements are. That's for a different class for you to learn. But if you are also in question of, oh, what did he say about the standard ceiling height or something like that, just ask. Right? It's no problem. Ask your neighbor. Somebody will know. Okay? So I'm going to draw in these windows right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the line tool, right? And I need to know where these windows are going to appear. Actually, I'm going to use the offset tool. I think it'll be a little easier. So I'm going to do offset. And what I need first is what the head height of a window is. Standard head height. Anybody know that? Head height. Right? Where does the header go above a window? Typically. Right? It's usually 6'8", same as the door. Right? It is the height, is the upper edge of the window. So if you don't know that, you want a round number, you want to do 7 feet, that's fine. Right? I'm going to do 6'8". So I'm going to type 6 feet 8 inches. And I'm going to use this line, which remember was my floor, right, my theoretical floor, and I'm going to drop that up at 6 feet 8 inches. So you see how I'm starting to build out a guide for what this should be. Okay. Then I'm going to repeat the offset. So we'll do offset one more time. And this time I'm going to go down, and I want the, say, the window to be 4 feet tall. So we'll say 4 feet. And I'll drop that in like that. Actually, this window shouldn't be 4 feet because it's in the kitchen. We'll do 3 feet. Sorry. Offset, do 3 feet, and we'll offset there. Okay, so what I've effectively done with these guides is I've created, right, a little box where each of these windows is going to appear. So let me go ahead and come back to my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw, and let me turn on for just a second intersection in my snaps, and I'm going to draw a rectangle from there to there, and one more rectangle from here to here. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see this, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these guides. Remember, because they're guides, you don't really have to delete them. You can leave them. But I'm going to go ahead and delete these just so that you can see them a little bit better. Right? There's my 2 windows, and they correspond very nicely to where the 2 windows are in this wall. Right? I have 2 more windows that are over here, and I need to do those. So let me go ahead and do those. I'm going to type ray again, and we'll go down from there. I'm right-clicking to repeat the command. We'll go down from there. Right-clicking to repeat. All right, so there those are. Right. Once again, I already had the head height conveniently, so I could just pull a line straight across from here to here, because I already have that. And I want to offset this line, so we'll say offset, or I could pick the offset tool. And this time we'll do it at 4 feet, so they're a little bit taller because they're in a bedroom. There they are. So I have my guides nicely. We'll come back to my rectangle tool, and we'll go from there to there. And we'll repeat the rectangle, and we'll go from there to there. Okay? So thus far, everything that I've drawn has shown up on the guides layer. Right? And in reality, a lot of this stuff that I've drawn really belongs on the south elevation layer. So I need to change some layers. So I'm going to select some of the lines that should be going to the south elevation. Right, I can select them all at once. That's fine. There and there. So I have those selected. Oop, one more. There. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to click, see where it says guides right now? Right? That's the layer they're currently on. If I click the little triangle, I can then move them to the south elevation layer. And when I do that, you see that the lines turned white, right, where they were green. Now those are on the south elevation layer. Okay? And I can go back and I can delete these guides if I want. So now I have my windows drawn, right? I have my walls drawn. If we look at this, right, we're looking at this building. We've got an edge there, an edge there. That corresponds, right? We have 2 windows. We have 2 windows. Probably should draw in a little bit more detail around the window. So let me spend a little bit of time doing that. I'll use the polyline tool in this case. Let me draw a window sill. So let's come over here, I don't know, 2 inches. Go down. Come across here. I don't even remember what these windows were. They're probably something like that. All right, there's a little windowsill that goes below the window. Let's put it on the south elevation layer. And let's go ahead and take this and we'll copy it. Right, I can use the copy command right here too. And we'll copy from here to over there. Right, just trying to give ourselves a little bit of definition. Let's put a frame inside the window. So we'll go offset. I don't know. Let's do 2 inches. Give ourselves a little bit more detail. See how we're trying to add a little bit of what a window would look like, right? If you're struggling with what you want your window to look like, Google search windows and take an example, right? Maybe we want to divide it up so we have a little frame in here. Right, remember these are the same size windows, so I can draw it once and copy it. Right, let's do a little offset. Let's do a 1/2 inch. Let me do a trim, select all the objects, and we're just going to trim out these. Let's take these and put them in the south elevation layer. Or something like that. I'm just trying to make those look a little bit more like a window. Okay. That I could drop in? Yeah, I mean, we could bring in a block that was a window. That would be fine, too. So let me go ahead and copy it. I'm just trying to practice drawing. All right, we'll copy this over like that. Right, there's ways you can create your own block. There's a lot of solutions to that, but we can't cover everything. All right, so I have those two windows done. I could do the same little bit of detail here, right? But I also need to figure out how to draw the roof. And I've done a little bit of work on the roof here, thinking about what I thought the overhang should be, right? And for right now, I'll just do a flat roof on this section. I'll go through an example with a little bit of a sloped roof, and you can see that in a second. But if I were drawing a flat roof, right, I can go ahead and use some rays, right, that correspond to my overhangs. So I'll type ray. I'll go straight down. For the what? 18 inches. I mean, it depends on what the style of the roof is that you're going for. All right, so I've dropped those lines down. Right, I can draw a line that goes over. I don't know. Let's do a foot thick. I can come across back. And let me repeat. Actually, I'm going to do a polyline here. And we'll go over. Let me there. There. And there. All right, now these need to be on the south elevation. So let's take both of those. Oops. Put those on the south elevation. South elevation, perfect. All right, so those are there. The last thing that I need is I need a little bit more ground that goes below this building. So we'll draw in a little bit of ground because the building needs to rest on something. And we'll go ahead and put that on the south elevation. Okay, so if I were to hide or turn off my guides layer, we'd see that I've created virtually, kind of a rather ugly building, right? But it's a building nonetheless, right? And so you're going to be working through that, kind of adding more and more detail, just like you're adding more and more detail here. Now, once we get to this piece, we're going to think through the line weights a little bit. I only gave you a plan of what line weights should look like, but you can do kind of the same thing, right? So we could make, say, the window frame here and the window frame here a little bit thicker, maybe 0.9, right? And so to do that, I'm going to come up to the properties. I've selected the objects there, and I'm coming up to the properties here, which is in the home ribbon, and I'm just going to change the line weight, right, to be a different line weight. So we could say we want it to be a little bit thicker, right? One of the things about display mode in AutoCAD is it's very hard to see thinner line weights. So you need to be in kind of 0.25 or more to see it on screen, but when you print it, it'll end up being thicker. Okay? So if we're looking at the lines that I've drawn, we're not really seeing anything except for the fat lines that represent the walls themselves. So anyway, we could come in and we could continue. We could make the interiors of each of these windows a little bit thinner. We could say we wanted them to be 0.00, etc. Right? So I can assign those as line weights. Okay? So we've gone through and we've drawn one rather ugly building. And what we need to do, I'm missing one line right there. I'm on the wrong layer. Hold on a second. Let me turn guides back on. And let's change this to be south elevation. All right. So this takes a little bit of mental work, but we can draw the east elevation right over here. And we can reference this line very easily using what's called a 45-degree reflection line. So those of you that have been in 130 before, this makes sense, right? It works the same in AutoCAD. So I'm going to do array again, and I'm going to start at this corner of the bounding box that I drew, and I want it to come out here at 45 degrees. And so what I'm going to do is, you see on my cursor, I have a point right? But I also have a degree sign. Okay? So I'm going to hit Tab on the keyboard, and I want this to be at 360 minus 45, right? Or negative 45. We'll see if it lets us do negative 45. Right, there it is. And you see when I press Tab, and I typed in negative 45, and then I press Tab again, I'm now locked into, it has to be on that 45 degree angle. Right, so I'll go ahead and click it there, and I'll finish it. There it is. Okay. Now, what happens here is I can actually use my rays to reflect lines up here. So I'm going to repeat the ray command. And if this doesn't make sense, bear with me for a little bit. I hope that it will. I'm going to draw a ray from each of these main points. There. Now I'm going to come to these intersections, and I'm going to repeat the rays going up. Alright, then I'll come to each of my major building points. So right there is one corner. Right here is my next corner. Right here is my next corner. And right there is my last corner. Okay? So if I look at this, I have to turn my head to the side. Right? But if I look at this, I've essentially created my building already right here. Now it's a matter of, I'm going to switch my layers. I don't have a east elevation, so let me go back to my layer properties and create a east elevation layer. I'll call this east elevation. I should point out that there are specific layer guides that or layer templates that you should be using if you were working in an office or something like that. For what we're doing, we're not doing any of that. We're just doing standard layers that are intuitive. Okay? So I've made east elevation my active layer, or my current layer, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw a few things. So let me go to my line tool, and we'll draw a few lines. Draw these in 3 separate segments. Draw a line there. Draw a line here. Line there. And then I also need ground somewhere, so we'll add a little bit of ground. Okay, so if I temporarily turn off the guides layer, right, we see that I'm starting to draw that part of the building. It's on the side, so you have to kind of tip your head to one side to look at it, but we're getting there. Okay, so I need a few more things. I need some guides for where the roof would be, and I'm going to go ahead and do that ray command again, ray. And you see that this time I'm not being overly concerned with deleting any of the rays. I'm just leaving them there, all right, because they're on non-printing layers. There. Let me go ahead and draw a few segments here. All the rays are on their own guides layer. You're right. Thank you. Let me select these. Good catch. I'll change those. Okay, so now if I turn that guides layer off, right? We can see that I've effectively created this elevation of the building rather quickly, right? Because I already have a bunch of stuff from this view that I've just transferred over to this view, okay? Furthermore, we can do a few windows. Looks like I have a little window here, right? And I have a door there. So I can come back, we'll turn on the ray, or the guides layer. We'll do a few more. Go from right there. Oh, they're on the wrong layer again. Goes on the guides layer, right? Now I need a height for these windows, so I'll pull this across. Should just switch my layer to guides for a second. I'm just switching my layer to guides here. We'll do one more ray, and that gives me the intersection right here and here of where that's going to be. I need the lower end of that, so let me go ahead and do a line that goes from here to here, and that should be on the east elevation. Make sure east elevation is active. We'll do an offset of 4 feet, and I'll drop this window down right there. Okay, so let me go ahead and turn off the guides layer for a second, and you see that I've created kind of the holding place for that window, right? I can use one of these windows because I already drew it and drop it in over there. Okay, so I could take this and then I could copy it from here. I could bring it right up to there, and then I could select it again, like this, and I could rotate. Right, there's rotate, and I could have it go right there. Right? So it's once you've created one, it's easy to use it over and over again. Okay? So I could continue with this process and reflect and do the opposite, right? Where we go up above and then we do one on this side. Right? So this is folding out your elevations. If you can mentally learn to do this, it makes your life really, really easy. Right? Because it doesn't matter whether things are right side up or upside down. Okay? It takes a while to get used to how that works. If you're uncomfortable with it, right, and you draw the first elevation and you're ready to move on to the second elevation, right, you can making sure that all of your layers are on. You can select everything, go to rotate, right, pick a corner and rotate the whole building like that, and draw your next elevation here. Okay, and then work your way through, do another rotation, right? And a lot of times that'll make it a little bit easier as you're learning to do this. You can confirm. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. Okay, that might help a lot of you, right? When you get better and better, when you move on, you get through school, it's going to start to not really matter anymore whether things are upside down or right side up. I will show you next class how we're going to assemble these such that it doesn't matter whether they're upside down or right side up. We'll end up putting them all together in something called paper space and dealing with rotations and stuff then. Okay? So the purpose today is to go back, let me jump back one more step here, is to get all of your elevations done and your floor plan done. Okay? Remember, since this is your assignment, I'm giving you a bunch of time in class to work on it, which means you don't have a lot of homework, which is a good thing, right? But that also means that you have to work and get your stuff done here as well. If you don't get all 4 of the elevations, not to worry. You get as far as you get today. But the more you get, the better you'll be prepared for next class. Okay? So I told you that I would show you how to deal with the roofs if you wanted an overhang. So I'm going to, for those of you that are interested in having a sloping roof, we'll go through that. Okay? Let me go through, let me turn off the guides for just a second so we can clarify. And I'm going to delete the tops of these roofs for right now. And I just press the delete key to make those go away. And we'll press the delete key there. Okay, so I'm back. Let me turn on my guides again. There we are. I have my edges of where my overhang would be, right? And I need to think through a little bit about how this roof would look, right? So in reality, if I was doing just a standard roof, chances are there'd be a gable that ran this way and a gable that ran that way, right? And there would be a valley here and a valley there. And so I need to be able to draw that. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to understand just this edge of the building from here to here, in that there would probably be a ridge right there in the center. So let me do a ray from the center that goes down like that. And again, this should be on the guides layer. And let me go ahead and make guides current. All right. So now the next piece of the puzzle is I need to know what the slope of the roof would be, right? And so a standard slope would be maybe a 6 and 12, right? Maybe a 4 and 12, depends on the style of the building. If you were trying to do more of a cabin, maybe you'd do something that was all the way up to a 12 and 12. And so when I'm referring to a 6 and 12 or a 12 and 12, right? Basically what we're saying is how far, for every 12 inches that we go horizontally, right? How far do we go up, right? So if it's a 6 and 12, right? This would be 6 and this would be 12. So I go over 12 and up 6, and that would then be my slope, right? If it was a 12 and 12, right? We go over 12 and up 12, and my slope would be like that. Do you see how the slope changes, right? A 12 and 12, right? 12 and 12 is a 45-degree line, right? Which is about as steep as you get. You might get an 18 and 12 if you were doing like an A-frame or something like that, which would be up here, right? Really steep, right? Not very common. 12 and 12 is kind of it. 8 and 12 is really steep, hard to work on without ropes if you were actually building it. 6 and 12 is reasonable. You can actually walk on it up there. So it's kind of up to you. A standard, kind of a typical house that was built today probably has a 6 and 12, right? A 4 and 12, which is even less, right? Something like this, 4 and 12, right? Is more of like a 60s ranch house. Tends to have a 4 and 12. It's a very benign slope, but that's about kind of the minimum that you'd be going if you were doing asphalt shingles, right? You could technically go to like a 2 and 12, but they don't recommend it on a lot of the product packaging. Anyway, so knowing that piece of information, right? If I wanted a 12 and 12, it's easy. It's 45. If I wanted a 6 and 12, right? I can do it in two ways. The first thing that I can do is I can set up my own little guide, right? I can go a line, and I can come over here, and I could say I want to go over 12 inches, and I want to go up 6 inches, and I'll hit enter to finish. So this angle is the angle. So now I can use a ray, and we can go from this point through that point, and I end up with the slope of the roof. Do you guys see how I did that? Okay. The other thing that we can do, and you'll start to memorize this, right? If a 12 and 12 is a 45 degree, then a 6 and 12 would be half of that, which would be 22 and a half degrees. So I can do a ray. Oops. Right? And instead of doing that math, right, I could do a ray at 22 and a half degrees. So right here I could type 22.5, right? And it would lock me into the same angle. Okay? So since I already have this one drawn, I'm going to go ahead and mirror. Oops. Across the center. Right? We said that was the center, so I'll mirror that way. And now I end up with the two diagonals there and there, right? Which is quite nice. Okay? I also have my eaves, which are there. So now it's a matter of drawing off and making this look finished, right? So let me go ahead and do a line here, and we'll do a line from here to there. And we'll do a line from here to there. Now, of course, I forgot to change the layer, so let me go ahead and select and select. And we'll change these to be, thank you, south. Can't see it. Okay, so now we have south. Let me go ahead and turn off the guides for just a second for clarity. All right, so I have that slope to the roof, right? I need a little bit more information to draw this accurately. I want to do a little bit of a fascia on here. So let me go ahead and do an offset, and we'll do that at a 2x6, which is 5.5 inches. And I'll put those two down. Just gives me a little bit of framing on it, right? I also know where the end of my roof is, which is right there. So when I turn those guides back on, let me go ahead and trim this. There and there. And when I turn those guides back on, right, we also know where the end is going to be. So I'll do a line there, and a line there. Now, I don't know exactly where it's going to be, so I just leave the line a little bit long, and then I'll turn off the guides again. And I'm going to do, remember that trick with the fillet that I did before, right? I did a fillet, which is right here, and I specified that the radius, so I typed R for radius, and I specified that that was 0. And then I can click on this line and that line, and it'll come together as a nice little point. It makes life a little bit easier, right? I could extend the lines instead, but to me, it's the fillet is the fastest way of doing it. So there it is, right? I have those two pieces. I need to deal with a few more trims, right? My walls aren't quite long enough just yet, so let's go ahead and extend, right? Which is underneath trim. It's the opposite, so there's extend. I'll hit enter for all, and we'll extend that up, and we'll extend that up, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and, for now, I'm going to delete this line right there. And so we see this with its little bit of a roof, okay? So I want to do the same thing over here, right? But this one goes the opposite direction. So in reality, I need some information from this side over here, right, to be able to pull it across and make it accurate. So I'm going to draw the roof on this first. So let me go ahead and turn back on my guides. Oops. There we go. And so we'll do one more ray, and we'll do it right there in the center, right? And I know where the edge is. It's right there. So I'm going to do my little cheater lines. So we're going to go from here, we're going to go 12 inches, and then we'll go up 6 inches. There it is. Hit enter. I'll type ray, and we'll go from there to there, and that gives me the first line. I'm going to mirror this across the center of the roof. There it is. Like that. And so now we'll come back, and I'll trace over it. There, there, and there. And again, I should have changed my layer first. That's going to be east elevation. There it is. And let me turn off for just a second my guides layer. And I'm going to put east elevation. And now I need to do that same stuff that I was doing before. So let me do an offset. Oops. And we'll do a 5.5. There it is. Now we need to do those straight little lines. Do there. And then I'll do a fillet right there. Of those two, make them come together nicely. Okay. Don't need that line anymore, but I do need to extend these up. So let me do extend. I'll hit enter for all, and we'll extend that up and that up. Okay, so now I have that end of the building. Okay, so if we turn back on the guides layer, right, we've got all of my lines. Actually, you know, for clarity purposes, I think I'm going to delete the roof slopes so that they don't get overly complicated. And I'm going to pull a line from the peak of this roof back over to this view. Right? So we'll come back to my ray. And we'll start there and we'll go straight down. Oh, it should be on the guides layer. And we'll do one more ray from right there over, right? And it looks like this actually ends up being consistent in the same height. No surprise, my building's the same height, my rooms are the same width. So I'll go ahead and draw, right, from here to there, right? And then I'm going to end up coming down such that it meets that point. Like that. This should be on my south elevation. And let me go ahead and turn off the guides. And so we're starting to see this come together. I do, however, need a little bit more of my trim. So let's go ahead and do a little trim board here. And then let me do trim one last time for those pieces. Right? And so now I have right, the roof that's a sloping roof, right? I can do the same part of the roof up here, right? So let me turn back on my guides. And we need to go all the way to there. And let's turn off those guides. Make sure that these are actually on the east elevation, which they are. And we need a couple more lines. Connect this to here. There. The what?
You're on south. So.
Yeah, we'll fix it later. Alright, so we have to do a few little trims here. Let's go trim, select all, and let's clean this up. There. And so you're right, a bunch of those lines were on the south elevation, so I'm just going to make sure they're all on the east elevation. I'll select everything, and I'll change the object here to be on the east elevation. Right? And now all of those are on the east elevation. Okay? So, I'm going to turn you loose now to go ahead and draw this. Hopefully that wasn't too much to take in. If the sloping roof seemed too complicated, do a flat roof. Right? This is not the end of the world. This is not not graded such that you'll get graded down if you do a flat roof. I'm just trying to show you kind of the basics of how you would draw this building. Okay? When you go to try to figure out your roof, your floor plans will look different, so it's going to take you a little bit of experimentation. You might not get the roof right until you bring it into SketchUp, in which case you probably will get it right once you start building it in 3D. So don't be overly worried if it doesn't quite work out for you. Okay? Are there any global questions? No, we got a couple more in AutoCAD, and then we'll get into SketchUp. All right?